Tonight, Tracing the Past takes you into the paranormal, looking at the history behind the ghostly activity at both Northwest Missouri State University and Workman Chapel. Roberta Hall, a senior residence complex at Northwest Missouri State University, got its name from an unfortunate accident. The 1951 explosion and fire, which injured 30 women, caused the injuries that would later take student Roberta Steele's life. Roberta Hall is featured in the book Haunted Missouri, written by Northwest professor Jason Offutt.
Roberta Hall is named after a woman named Roberta Steele. In 1951, there were railroad tracks that ran behind Roberta Hall, which was called Residence Hall at that point. That was the only dormitory on campus. And a gasoline tank exploded. The explosion was so great, people 75 miles away reported seeing the explosion. It shot a 10-foot long I-beam through the third floor. And caused a fire, so set the thing on fire. A number of people were injured. Among them was Roberta Steele. She was taking a shower at the time, and she suffered extensive burns. While she was hospitalized, they used cortisone on her, which was relatively new at the time, which helped cure her burns. She came back to school, but she was never healthy because the cortisone treatment poisoned her liver, and she died a year later. Since her death, people have reported hearing and seeing strange things in Roberta Hall, and they've always attributed it to her because she, had such tragedy happen to her in Roberta. Simple things from, hearing someone walking across the room, things misplaced, to actually seeing drawers pull out of a dresser right in front of them. People have reported seeing someone in their room, and when they stared at that person, they disappeared. I think one of the more chilling ones was from the 1980s. I interviewed a woman who was living in Roberta Hall, and the doorknob, the inside of her room, kept turning, and she kept saying, "Come in," and nobody would come in. So she got up and opened the door, and when she did, nobody was outside. But she tested the outside doorknob, and it turned and the inside doorknob didn't. So something was inside her room trying to get out.
Students say her ghost found its way back to Northwest Missouri State and now haunts the residential complex. Some in the past have taken it so far as to burn an iron into the carpet to ward off unwanted spirits. This practice has been forbidden since it was recarpeted, with students charged a hefty fine for purposely damaging the carpet.
Depending on where you lived, as far as what would go on in Roberta at night. So I guess she was friendly during the day, and then she liked to play at night. So that building is so old, you can actually hear the pipes rattle and hear the air movement through the room out of the vents. The ventilation system's just really loud. So it's kind of makes things, the environment anyway, eerie. At night anyway. And during the day it's fine. Lights flickering or, things falling off the wall, more like flying off the wall. So I don't know if, I can't remember, because it's been so long, I can't remember if anyone actually ever said that they saw Roberta. So, and of course the university will say, oh, there's no such thing, just because of, recruitment purposes. I think it's just kind of one of those lores that each of the sororities has, depending upon which floor and which part of the floor you live on. I wouldn't say scared or ever feel haunted. You just think, well, if it's not our fault, then who else would it be? How else could this be, explained of why it happened? So that's a lot of where the stories came from.
Coming up on Tracing the Past, we look off campus at Workman Chapel, another location featured in Offutt's book, Haunted Missouri. Tonight on Tracing the Past, we investigate some of the paranormal history in Maryville, Missouri. We already discussed the ghost of Roberta Steele. Now we are on to Workman Chapel, located just outside of Maryville. Built in 1901 by John Workman, it was used to hold Sunday services, but now the only visits it gets are from those in search of a scare. Ghostly activity has been said to take place in the cemetery right next to the chapel as well.
Workman Chapel has a lot of urban myth and legend around it. It was built in the early 1900s by Reverend John Workman, who's buried out there. It was a church for all the neighboring farmers to come and worship. It lasted until 1950 when farms started getting more sparse. More people started moving to town. There weren't enough members of the congregation to keep the church going, so it was abandoned. The cemetery is still used. There's an adjoining cemetery, and people are still buried out there. Some of the urban legends are a woman was hanged from a tree, and if you pull your car underneath that tree at night, you will hear feet scraping across the roof of the car that's supposedly hers, dangling, when she's dangling from a rope. There's been other urban legends of a pastor having killed someone with a knife and hid the knife underneath the floorboards. And if you go to Workman Chapel, a lot of the floorboards have been pulled up. Again, they're urban legends. There's no proof that these things actually happened. However, there have been a number of reports of people hearing horse hooves in the cemetery, reported seeing Civil War soldiers riding horses in the cornfields around the cemetery, and there are 2 Civil War soldiers buried out there. I interviewed a student a couple of years ago who was out there during the day with a friend, and they looked around very scared because they heard a horse galloping toward them and then galloping away, and there was nothing around them. The things I've experienced out at Workman Chapel have to do with that horse. A couple of years ago, I had a group of students out there, and one of them brought a recorder and put it in an area of the cemetery close to one of the headstones of a Civil War soldier, and most of us stayed away from it because we wanted to see if it could collect EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomena. That's an audio recording picking up a voice that nobody heard with their ears. And he let it sit there, and later he went and retrieved it and rewound it and listened to it, and I heard this. There were hoof beats, like a horse was running by on that audio, which I thought was pretty fascinating. About the only other thing that I experienced out there, I went out there one night around 10 o'clock just to scope the place out by myself. By the way, when you're ghost hunting, don't ever go by yourself. So do as I say, not as I do. And I got out of the car. I am not claustrophobic by any means, especially when I'm standing outside in the open skies. But I got out of my vehicle, and it was like all of the air had been sucked out of the area. There was no movement. No wind, no crickets chirping, no coyotes howling, and out at Workman Chapel, that's all you hear. And there's never, a time when there's no wind. It was just dead and oppressive, and I started to feel inexplicably panicked. My chest got tight, my breathing got labored, and I just felt that there was something that didn't want me there. So I did what any smart guy should do. I left.
When I was a freshman here in Northwest, I actually went out to Workman's Chapel as a part of a freshman seminar sort of ghost hunting experience. And actually my freshman trip out there was the first time there was really any evidence caught like on video or photo that at least I know of. We went out there and we had audio recorders and video recorders, and we were taking pictures. And the entire night was kind of uneventful. Until the very end, we were about to leave, and a girl had a picture taken of her, and there was like this white, like a wisp or a string or something, and it looked like it was going around her. And we thought, well, maybe it was, a hair on the lens. We were trying to debunk it as best we could, and we couldn't. It looked like it went behind her. It wasn't in any of the photos that were taken right before or right after it, and it wasn't like a spider web or anything, because, like I said, it went right behind her, and it wasn't there before or after of other pictures that other people were taking of her.
For some, Workman Chapel and Roberta Hall are enough scares for a lifetime, while others are left with an appetite for more haunted locations. If you find yourself in search of more scares, look no further than Jason Offutt's book, Haunted Missouri, for your guide to scary places in Missouri. Stay connected with our online content next week on our Facebook page to see the history of bomb shelters. Stay tuned for After Dark Arcade.